center since the beginning of my term as governor, how we make our streets safer. And to get together here, I want to talk a little bit about some of the historic investments we're making in our budget, because you have to put funding behind the initiatives. And also, since we're in this place, I want to talk about what happens in communities. And a place like this Boys and Girls Club, that since 1971 has been a safe haven for young people to come to and escape the streets and have a place where adults care about them so deeply. And so I want to thank them for hosting us as we work and talk about progress we made in driving down gun violence, but also restoring people's confidence. And we just had a roundtable, and it was not the first time we've gathered. It's the first time we did it in person, but we've had too many shootings, too much heartbreak, and too many murders in this community. And from 2019 to 2021, shootings were up in this community 123%. And murders were up 165%, just in that 2-year time frame. But what else happened during that time frame? We experienced a global pandemic, and literally all that sense of security and normalcy was literally wiped out. And sociologists years from now can figure out exactly why this led to a spike in crime. I just have to deal with the fact that there was a dramatic spike in crime, not just in Rochester, not just in New York State, but all across the nation. And that is a statement of fact. But we don't sit back. We engage. We bring people together in a pursuit of solutions. So last July, when the numbers were so frightening, and people were afraid to walk the streets, and businesses were concerned about whether they should even stay in our city, I brought together the people I announced here, and at the time, our brand new then U.S. Attorney Trini Ross, who couldn't be with us here today, she came here as well and worked with local law enforcement, state law enforcement, all the partners I talked about. We got together and said, something has to give here. What can be done differently? And I know from my husband's role as U.S. Attorney under Barack Obama, before that, lifelong prosecutor, much of his work done here in Rochester. We also knew that there's natural silos that are created between different entities. You got the U.S. Attorney's Office, you got the District Attorney's Office, you have the Marshal's Office, you have the Sheriff's Office, you have local police, you have ATF, FBI, you have everything. And everybody has a role to play. And they have people that are looking to make sure they perform those roles. But there's never been any model that says, why are you all doing your work over here when the community is experiencing a crime wave of epic proportions? They need you to work together as one team. One team. That's our slogan for the Buffalo Bills, isn't it? One team. And so that's what I'm so proud of happened right here in this community. Leaders of all these different diverse entities who have different roles to play came together and said, how can we share information? How can we work together? How can we make a decision about whether a case should be prosecuted by the state, the district attorney, or by the federal government? And those conversations began. And that was the beginning of something spectacular that John DeVito, who's seen it all, 24 years at ATF, said that this is a model for the rest of the nation. I'm proud of that. But the best model for me is when we finally drive the numbers down exponentially. And we're on path to do that. Not there yet, but we're definitely have reversed the trend from what we saw just last summer. Again, we met in July, we met in August. I think people weren't sure I was going to show up again. I said, I need to make progress. Got to stay on top of these. And so I also directed our state police to get very involved. I know what the state police is capable of. I've spent a lot of time with our state police. I knew that they could actually be eyes and ears and hands on the ground, boots on the ground to help a city that needed our help at that time. So I said to the mayor, I'll give you police officers. I'll give you state police on the ground. And we made sure that Rochester had what it needed. And I would say this coordination, this effort, this boots on the ground, this willingness to just pull together has now resulted in something which could have been a very different outcome. We just saw our data from 2022. Shootings are now down 13%, murders down 11%. And this year, just looking in the last 2 months, 2023, in 2022, in comparison, we had 39 people shot in the city of Rochester in that 2-month period alone last year. So far, that number is now 19. 19 too many, but the trend has been reversed. So all these have a ripple effect. I'm not telling everyone that it's over, we should feel safe now. But my God, we could have been talking about the numbers going up another 100% or 120%, 165%, and they're coming down. And I want to thank everyone. Let's give a round of applause to all the people I mentioned who are out there every single day, some literally in harm's way on our streets to make sure that we can sleep safely in our beds at night. Let's give all the members of law enforcement a round of applause. You think about the effect of crime on communities as well. I look at everything from hospital admissions. I mean, this number of cases, this means that there's a lot of people who are shooting victims. They show up in our emergency rooms, already overcrowded, already overstressed from what happened during the pandemic. And now we have even more people in life-threatening situations that compel the individuals in these emergency rooms to drop everything on a late Saturday night and respond to the next shooting victim in time for the next one to come after that and the one after that. So we also have to look at our emergency room capacity. And I'm very proud to announce here today, and you heard about it last week perhaps, but I'm going to go visit shortly, $50 million to help construct a $640 million new emergency room department at Strong Memorial Hospital. We're going to be tripling the size of the emergency room, as well as this will be the largest construction project in Rochester's history. So that's what we're going to do. My prayer is that they don't need the emergency room for shooting victims. They'll be able to take care of everyone else who needs their outstanding care. And I'm focused on transforming our whole delivery system of healthcare. So congratulations to the University of Rochester and Mark Traubman for this amazing announcement. But also, I think about the effect on, as I mentioned, children, communities. It's not just a shooting victim's younger or older siblings, it's also the perpetrator's family members. Think about what that does when your older brother, you're 10 years old and your brother's hauled off being accused of a homicide. I mean, that's about as traumatic as it gets for a child. And we have too many children who've been exposed to this in our cities, in places like Rochester and Buffalo, Syracuse, New York City, Albany. And so I think about, again, this organization, the Boys and Girls Club, how important this is. So in order to keep your work going right here as this oasis for children, we're announcing today $112,000 for renovations at the teen center. So I want to make sure that we get that money flowing right here at the Boys and Girls Club. Also, we announced our budget just about 6 weeks ago. A budget can be boring, but it also is a statement of priorities. It's beyond the numbers. It's about where you're putting the money. And we've made progress. We've been driving down gun shooting incidents, but I'm not done. Last year, we made a record investment in our gun-involved violence elimination program, GIVE. Rochester is one of the beneficiaries of this. And I said, last year's record amount was not enough. Let's break records again. This year, we're adding $110 million statewide, so we'll have over $337 million. And for the Rochester area, this means you'll be receiving $36 million, up from $18 million a year ago. Our state police will be increasing our community stabilization units, literally the people on the ground, from 16 communities to 25 communities. Also, we need more law enforcement. I'm increasing the state police academies. They said we only have capacity for 2. I said, really? There's nowhere else in the state of New York we could have a couple more classes. So we are now doubling it. So we're now going to have 4 graduating classes every year, because I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to train the next generation of people who are committed to public safety. And also expanding our presence on all kinds of task force. I've spoken before about how we are the first in the nation to have a 9-state gun interdiction task force, and I've been talking to the other governors who are not members, and they're going to sign up, so we'll have literally the entire Northeast pulling together, sharing data about guns that are being used in a crime in one state before it gets to the next state so we can protect our citizens even more. So we also have to focus on what our local prosecutors are doing. People like Sandra Dorley and prosecutors all over the state. They need more assistance as well. My budget is going to increase from $12 million last year to $52 million this year, support for our district attorneys. So that'll help increase support for our district attorneys. We also want to make sure that all of our law enforcement entities have the technology to be able to share the data in real time. And so we're going to be increasing and bringing to Rochester $2 million in community-based organizations to help with that as well. And Project RISE and other initiatives, the gun violence disruption organizations, I believe in them. I know the impact that they've had. I've met many of the leaders, people who've been in the system themselves. They know the story better than anyone. They know what led them on a path that otherwise maybe they didn't have to be on. And they are the trusted voices that we need more of out there. So we're going to continue identifying the programs that really work, putting money behind them, and making sure that we support them any way we can. So those are some of our initiatives. But there's another public safety initiative that doesn't have dollars attached to it. In fact, in my opinion, it's a very simple change in our law. And I've been focused on, since I became governor, how we can improve our bail laws. And let me say this. From the beginning, I have supported the underlying premise of the bail changes because we had a situation that came to light and is emblematic of many other situations where a young person was held not because of the severity of a crime, stealing a backpack, literally stealing a backpack, but spent years in Rikers awaiting his chance to go to court. Now, if that child, that teenager, had parents with money in the bank account, or they had their own money and they could have made bail, could have been back in school, could have gone off and got a job, would have had a very, very different outcome. But the laws did not allow that. He didn't have the money, he had to be detained. So when you think about, did that really make sense for society to hold someone for years waiting for their trial for such a minor crime? When someone else accused of the exact same crime would be back out home, the difference being the size of your bank account? Oh, that's not a system of justice at all. No one would believe it was. But the bail changes in 2018 swept up too many crimes and covered too many situations, and ones that were common sense would say, wow, I can't believe someone could actually get out for doing that crime with a gun, that they've hurt other people and they could do it again. And so we look back, we made changes last year. We put in standards for judges to consider that were not there before. Was there harm done to a person or individual? Was this a repeat offender? Was it a violation of an order of protection? Guns involved? I mean, we said, common sense says you should give the judges something to look at, because otherwise all they had the discretion to look at was whether or not the person was likely to come back to court. So they are directed by the law to institute the least restrictive means to ensure a return to court. I guess they would look at risk of flight. They have a bank account in the Grand Caymans, okay. They have access to a private plane. They're probably not going to stick around. But it became an absurd standard, that that's all you could look at. You can't look at whether or not they're going to go out and hurt someone again, or perhaps kill someone this time. And so we said, you know, we had those modifications last year. Now we have an inconsistency in the law. The standards we put in last year to consider, which makes sense, but as long as that language, the least restrictive means, remains, and this is from our district attorney, not just here but all across, then the judges have the discretion to opt for that standard if they want to do this. To me, that says, again, we're back to a system of unfairness. It depends on the judge and the political leanings or the philosophical leanings or the judicial leanings of a judge versus looking at common sense, commonly accepted criteria. So we have felonies and repeat offenders that are bail eligible, and many times the judges are not setting bail. We just talked in our forum last night, 4 cases come in, gun cases, gun possession cases where the judge says, go out, come back another day. Yeah, you're okay, go back out in the street. That doesn't make me feel safe. It doesn't make people of Rochester feel safe. And so that's what we're talking about. We have this inconsistency in the law. Confusion is understandable. And I want to make sure that we remove that one standard, give them criteria to look at, and I want to make sure that judges have what they need. So removing the least restrictive means standard for bail-eligible cases, which are the serious violent offenses, is what we're going to be looking for. And we're not, thank you. Again, we're not looking to criminalize poverty. We're not wiping out the standard, the least restrictive means for these other cases where you would say, why would they have to sit in jail waiting because they didn't harm anybody, there's not a gun. That's what we're talking about, leaving that intact. I want everyone to understand that. We're talking about protecting society in a way that people would think is common sense. And so many members of the legislature have stepped up in support, others have not. And I want to say it's courageous when someone can stand up and say, I know we need this change. I know it's hard, but I also know that it has to happen. So I want to recognize Senator Cooney for doing that. And he is one of our leaders. He's one of our champions. So I will let him speak in a couple minutes. I want you to hear from him directly about why this is so important to him and his influence in the legislature. But here's what we have to do. To bring down crime once and for all, we need to invest in programs that stop gun violence. We need to put more police on the streets. We need to invest in mental health. We didn't even talk about our bill. Housing for sure. Housing for sure. That's why we have a very aggressive housing plan on the books. And it's on our list too. We also want to make sure that people who are dealing with severe mental health problems have the resources they need, and that there's reentry housing for people when they leave incarceration, that they are not thrown out in the streets, that they have a place to go, help lead them to a job, help them get the support they need, and also community programs to help get our kids back on track. So I believe that a multifaceted approach is necessary. Over time, we'll keep making a difference. But for now, my focus is on simply keeping New Yorkers safe and secure. And with that, thank you. Let me bring up Mayor Malik Evans to talk about what we're doing on the front lines of fighting crime right here in the city of Rochester. Mayor Adams.
So it's good to be here. My kids spend a lot of time here at the Boys and Girls Club as members, and I want to thank Dwayne Mahoney for hosting us here today. Let's give Dwayne Mahoney a round of applause. And I want to thank Governor Hochul again for not forgetting about Rochester. She has been here regularly to make sure that we make the right investments in our young people, to make sure that we make the right investments in our community to make sure that we reduce crime. I also just want to recognize some of our local elected officials that are here. Councilmember Mike Patterson from Rochester City Council, County Legislator Mercedes Vasquez-Simmons, President Sabrina Lamar, who are all here. If you can give our local elected officials a hand, great. We will not reduce violent crime in our cities or any cities without the whole of community approach, without collaboration. And I cannot say enough about this governor and her push for collaboration, for understanding that Rochester is not on an island, that we are not alone, that we have to work collaboratively in order to reduce crime, in order to make sure that we make the right investments. And the state has been absolutely critical in helping us do this. I'm a numbers guy. I come from the banking world, as many of you know. And our chief knows that I look at our numbers every day. Once a week, I'm looking at our numbers. And I always say that I am gratified, but not yet satisfied as to where we need to go to make sure that we drive down violent crime almost to zero. And I will tell you that because of the support of programs that the governor has in this budget and are expanding, such as the Gun-Involved Violence Elimination Program, or GIV, we're seeing the results in Rochester. But we know that with violent crime, there's perception and there's reality, and we are battling against both. But we know that with the governor's support, and she mentioned this in her remarks about the numbers last year, we're seeing that this year, in the first 7-8 weeks of this year, we're seeing shooting incidences down 42.86%, shooting victims down 51.22%, and individuals killed by gun violence down 16.67%. Now, we have not arrived. We cannot celebrate. We cannot pop the champagne. But we can be gratified but not satisfied to continue to push and support programs that will do this. I wholeheartedly support the governor and her budget that she has put forth to the legislature. I wholeheartedly support it. I believe that it is important that we make these investments. She has a great balance of prevention, intervention, and suppression in that budget. She also is showing that we can do it all. So often we get in our mental capacity that, oh, if we're doing one thing, we can't do the other thing. No, she has shown through $84.1 million for youth employment programs, $37 million for the gun program, $70 million for communities to respond to the aftermath of gun violence, that you can do both. $52 million to aid prosecution for 62 district attorneys' offices across the state. She has shown that we can strike the balance, and that in New York State, that we can be a leader, All of us who the governor mentioned, and before I call Senator Cooney up, the governor mentioned that we have been at this for the past year on every level of government. From the federal government to the state government, local, and county, we have been working collaboratively to try to put a dent to the scourge in our community that is wiping out way too many lives. And we know the numbers. But this budget helps us to continue to work to bring that down. And the reason why we're here at the Boys and Girls Club is not by accident or by happenstance. One of the best violence reduction programs that we have is we're sitting right here in the Boys and Girls Club and what they're doing. And those are the types of investments that this budget makes. Those are the types of investment that this governor has made. And this is why we need to make sure that we support her in her efforts to continue to do this. But it takes all of us in this room working together to make sure that we make it to the next level and make sure that we are creating a safer community. It is not me or the governor alone, but it is we, all of us in this room, that are going to make that happen. And speaking of we, I always say I blame our state legislators if I don't get what I want. Because I told the governor, but the state legislators got to pass it, right, Jeremy? Right, Senator Cooney? So we have our great senator from the Senate. Senator Cooney is here to make some remarks and close us out. I want to thank him for his leadership. I want to thank him for his partnership on this public safety issues, but other issues in Rochester, the investment in Rochester. Because this governor and this senator, they are making sure folks across the state know that New York State doesn't end at Westchester County. They're saying that, hey, there's this great city up here in Rochester. And as the young people used to say, don't talk about it, be about it. And this senator and this governor, they don't talk about it, they're all about it. And their presence here has shown that they are all about it. So with that, I bring up Senator Jeremy Cooney.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Governor. I'm frustrated, and my guess is that many of you in this room are frustrated too. How do we solve the crime that we're seeing on our streets? Doesn't have an easy answer. There's not a single perpetrator. It's not a one law. We are seeing something different in Rochester, different than the rest of the cities across this state, different than our sister cities on the Thruway, Buffalo, Syracuse, Albany. This is a culmination of years of systemic disinvestment in our neighborhoods. It's the result of a lack of economic opportunities and lost generational wealth for Black and brown people. It is the underperformance of an urban school system and the corresponding workforce challenges. It's the fact that one zip code will determine one's life expectancy based upon health care inequities and an undervaluing of physical and mental health access in communities of color. But we can't let these realities justify violence. Just as much as we can't let data hide the realities of fear. Because the neighborhoods that I represent, public safety isn't a data point, it's a feeling. And when you feel safe, you feel safe. And when you don't, you don't. And right now, here's what I'm hearing from our community. Pastors are burying members of their congregations every week. Seniors are afraid to leave their homes. Neighborhood associations are frustrated. They don't know what to do. Parents don't want to put their kids on the bus in the morning because they want to make sure they come back home at the end of the day. Business owners are worried about the safety of their employees at the end of the workday when they walk out to the parking lot or to catch the bus. And those who are committing the crimes are getting younger and younger. This is a moment for leadership, and our governor is sounding the alarm. But it's not just for state senators and for mayors. It's for all of us. All of us demanding something better for Rochester. And while I certainly don't have the perfect solution, I'm listening to my community's plea to just do something. And I believe this is a start. Our state law allows for those accused of violent crimes or repeat offenders to be held. And we must continue to give judges the tools to enforce these laws. This isn't a rolling back or an overstep in public policy. It is a surgical approach to the law, making small improvements that will give our courts clarity and to keep our streets safe. Again, this is a moment for leadership for us all. And I'm committed to working with Governor Hochul, members of the State Assembly and the State Senate throughout the budget process, but as well as with members of our own community to make Rochester a safer place for all families and all neighborhoods. Because the future of our community is right here in the Boys and Girls Club. It's right across the street at Wilson Magnet High School. This is why we're in the room. Because the kids who play basketball here after the chairs are picked up and cleaned up, they need us. And it is time to step up and do what Rochester and New York needs us to do. Thank you. And thank you so much for coming out.